What's up, everybody? I have been debating myself for years, literally, on how to present certain subjects. And I've already recorded like 8 or 9 minutes of a pretty in depth re education video that I think a lot of people need. But I'm still scared to just drop the hammer and shock anybody's system out there. So I'm going to do one more with the kids' gloves on and just pay attention to what this book actually says. And just remember, it was these people who've done a lot of horrific things that have told you that the loving Father that Jesus was talking about is the same as the God of the Old Testament. But there were many people that disagreed with this idea. How many? We don't know because they did this to all of them. And we have spent a lot of brain dollars trying to justify the actions of the church and the God of the Old Testament, when Jesus was perfectly clear about who he was talking to and what he had to say about them. And if you happen to be one of these people, well, guess what? We've all been lied to. We're all in the same boat here. But Jesus told them point blank, you are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a red rummer from the beginning. He lives not in truth because there's no truth in him. He is the father of lies, and because you guys are so wrapped up in this that I can tell you the truth and you don't believe me. And there's a lot more where that come from that I will cover in other videos. And I'm going to bounce back and forth because, there's some of my audience that isn't interested in this. So let's take the 30,000 foot point of view on this and just remember that these are the people that are telling you that this is who Jesus was talking about. And they have done things more maniacal than any other organization in our modern times. All of the ancient cultures speak of the old gods, the Ajiji, Anaki, Elohim, it doesn't matter what you call them, the old powerful ones. I think that these were physical beings, and it really does sound like they genetically engineered us. But I look at the Exodus as the last of these ancient powerful ones to actually physically visit anybody. But it would appear that they used to live among us because it sounds like they founded every one of the cities. So let's start with Moses and the burning bush. And we're just going to go in chronological order. So some of these points you're just going to have to hold on to, and then they'll collect as we go. So Moses is approaching this burning bush, and God says, don't come any closer. Take off your sandals, for this ground you're standing on is holy ground. Now, just put a question mark next to the word holy. What is holy? And you can add glory to that. But as you will see, this is not unlike saying something powerful, something like radioactive. I don't think that's quite it, but something akin. So I'll cover all of this in detail in the other video. But instead of Yahweh saying, okay, I've seen your guys' suffering, so I'm going to set you guys free, take you to a beautiful valley where you guys can live in peace and happiness for generations to come. No, that's not what he says. He says, I'm going to make the Egyptians suffer so bad that they are going to pay you to leave. Literally give you all of their gold and silver and their clothes and everything. Just go. And these are the miracles that Yahweh performed. Turn the water to blood, a plague of frogs, gnats, flies, boils, locusts, darkness, and then gonna take out all of the firstborn of an entire nation. The miracles that Jesus performed were healing the sick, healing the blind, raising the dead, bringing good things into the world, life and love. Doesn't this seem like the exact opposite of that? Anyway, we'll go into that in detail in the longer video. Anyway, when he says that he's going to off every firstborn son of Egypt, he tells them to put blood over their doors so he knows not to go in there. As you will see later, there's something about blood that really stands out to Yahweh. Later, he has the priests sprinkle it on themselves, and he says it's like wearing a sign. But the all-knowing God needs a sign to understand who is his and who isn't. That's a little suspect. And also, yeast. He will not tolerate yeast anywhere near him. I think it's dangerous for him. So he tells them, you guys can't have any yeast for 7 days before. If anybody does, kick them out. Even future generations, 1 month out of the year, you're not going to eat any yeast in case he needs to come back and talk to somebody. But he says this like 5 different times in 5 paragraphs. No yeast. So after making every family in Egypt suffer the loss of their firstborn, and the 10 plagues that are very much in the domain of the Lord of Flies, Yahweh had made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people and gave them whatever they asked for, so they plundered all of Egypt. Where do you think they got all the gold to be making golden cows and whatnot? Once again, we have no yeast, no yeast, no yeast. This will be like a sign on your hand or your forehead, which sounds a lot like the mark of the beast, but there's something about yeast that really stands out to Yahweh. He then tells Moses, consecrate to me every firstborn male. The first offspring of every womb belongs to me, whether human or animal. Now, I thought we were all just intrinsically sons and daughters of the true God. But then Yahweh doubles down and says, no, I want all future generations to understand how powerful I am. I was able to take out all the sons of Egypt, firstborn. So from here on out, you are to give to Yahweh the first offspring of every womb. All the firstborn males of your livestock are to be sacrificed to me. Donkeys are special, which we'll get into the donkey-headed God in the other video. But he says that you can redeem a firstborn donkey with a lamb, so you have to sacrifice a lamb in place of the donkey. But if you don't redeem it, you got to break its neck. Then he says you can redeem every firstborn among your sons, but there's no explanation of how to redeem your sons. Now, this whole thing of offering up your firstborn males sounds really familiar. Just saying. Now, some people still hold this practice to this day. They bring their firstborn in on a silver platter. And if you look into the origins of the word redeem, it means ransom. So they ransom their firstborn back from God by paying the priest 5 shekels. Okay, so you have to pay if you want to keep your firstborn. Well, what if you don't have 5 shekels? Is it the same judgment as on the donkey? I'm sorry, but everything about this is just wrong. And once you go through and you see all this stuff, you can't unsee it. So that was the first law given to Moses, that every one of your firstborn are mine. So they're finally leaving Egypt with all their gold, all their clothes. The nation is in ruin. And I know people are going to say, well, yeah, but the Egyptians enslaved these poor people who are the eternal victims. Well, the Egyptians don't have any record of that, but they do have record of the Hyksos, who were Semitic people from the northeast, which is, you know what that area is. Some accounts say they came in through bloody conquest, and others say that they migrated there over generations and then usurped the power of Egypt. And when you know all this, it sounds a lot like the Dub Dub Deuce scenario, where they start in the middle of the story and say, oh, poor people, they were just minding their own business and nobody liked them. Well, that victimhood mentality is a hallmark as old as time with these people, evidently. Anyway, on the way out, Yahweh went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night a pillar of fire. And this pillar of smoke and fire never left. It was just constantly in front of them, until the Egyptians started pursuing them. And then the angel of Yahweh, which we need to stop looking at that word as this angelic thing. It just means messenger. So the messenger of Yahweh that had been flying in front of them in this big pillar of smoke and fire then moved in between them and the Egyptians. And then was the parting of the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea. It was the Sea of Reeds, which is, I'm not going to get into, pretty shallow. I'm not going to go through all of the wandering in the desert part of this, which I'm sorry to say, but there's no archaeological evidence for. Depending on who you ask, it's between 5,000 and 150,000. I've even heard 600,000. But even if it were just 5,000 people, it would leave a huge footprint in a desert area. Nobody's even found remains of like cooking fires for a camp that size, let alone a huge smelting furnace to make a golden calf with. But Yahweh sends his messenger ahead of them to prepare the way and tells Moses, pay attention to him, don't rebel against him. You guys are rebelling about every little thing. But the angel's job is to put terror and confusion into the people that, he says, are your enemies, but what have they done to the poor Hebrews here? They just are the people that live there. And he says, I'll not drive them out in a single year because the land would become too numerous with wild animals for you. So God Almighty can't handle some wild animals? Well, unless some kids call his prophet bald, then he'll send 2 bears out to maul 42 youngins. Jesus said, by their deeds you will know them. So what does this say about Yahweh? We're doing a lot of justifying here, all because of what these guys have taught you. Anyway, so then they come to Mount Sinai, and this fiery cloud and the glory of Yahweh settled on top of the mountain. To everyone watching, it looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. But Moses went up to talk with Yahweh. And this is where Yahweh gives Moses very precise instructions on how to build the tabernacle, how to build the altar, so that he can descend on it every night and consume his burnt offerings. Now, what did Jesus say about burnt offerings? He said that God did not desire them, nor was he pleased with them, though they were in accordance with Moses' law. So he's saying pretty clearly that the law of Moses is not the law of God. So look, Ruckus was the only boy in his litter, making him the firstborn son. So you're telling me that the God that made the cuteness of babies and puppies enjoys the smell of him burning on a fire? Are you freaking kidding me? Get the hell out of my house. I'm seriously tired of even playing this game trying to act like Yahweh is the God that Jesus is talking about. You'd have to throw me on the fire first before anything happens to my little buddy here. But that's what Yahweh demands, the firstborn of all creatures. Unless you got 5 shekels, then you can ransom your beloved child back. So I'm sure I've infuriated a lot of people here and they've stormed off. This is a bitter pill to swallow. Trust me, I know it hit me like a ton of bricks years ago, way before anybody was talking about any of this, which I now see quite a few people catching on. But let's just review the so-called miracles of Yahweh. Rivers of putrefied blood, insects, darkness, the removal of every single family in Egypt's firstborn son. He sent an angel out front to terrorize the people that lived in the lands ahead of them. Sweet smell of burning flesh on an altar. These are not the deeds of the loving Father that Jesus spoke of. If you want to equate these to something supernatural, it would be much closer to the Lord of the Flies than God. But I personally think Yahweh was just the last of these powerful beings to actually appear to humans. And then the unholy alliance of the cat-holics and the moneylenders, whose whole purpose has always been wealth and secular power, have told us, no, it's all the same God. He's completely justified in acts of genocide and defiling the purity of life in every way because he's so powerful. Look, we've all been fooled in one way or another at one time or another. We come into this world pure and innocent and trusting. We believe lies that have been told to us by other people that believe the lies that were told to them. There's only one group that I know that teaches the ends justify the means. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're saying that God can do whatever he wants, no matter how horrific it is, and you should just accept it because he's powerful. That is not what Jesus taught, and he specifically came to the people of Judea to say that this law of Moses that you guys are following is not the law of God. You guys have never even known God. So I just started a new playlist, made it public for you guys. I'll add more as I go, but if you haven't stormed out already and you want to really look into this subject, there's more and more people that have woken up to this, and they're a lot better at individual scriptures than I am. And if this comes as a bit of a shock and it stings a little bit, then I commend you for actually making it this far into the video. But I think you deserve to know these things. Because once you do, you don't have to struggle to reconcile. Just put all the pieces together. Solomon and his demons, Yahweh and his plagues of insects and pestilence. You have to ransom back your firstborn? Or if you can't, what then? You're supposed to offer them up? That's not the Father of Jesus. And Jesus never said, Yahweh who art in heaven. He said, Father who art in heaven. He knew the name of Yahweh. Anyway, that's enough damage for one video. Static out.